about if the costs are lowered and people can pay out of their pocket, then we wouldn't have that issue, and that would be something with the free marketplace is in, and that's the way things used to be.
Do you study up on the issues? I mean, would you say you're pretty versed?
I would say I'm pretty versed, but there's always room for improvement.
Yes, and there's great places like Norway.
Okay,
that,
all right, thank you so much.
Do you think the voters should really study? Do you think we should study up on all the issues in detail before we cast our vote?
No, it's just not realistic. Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, you would, but if you had to agree and understand every single policy, then nobody would vote.
Our last time the American worker had a raise, Dwight Eisenhower was president. From 1960, for a whole generation, we had flat growth. Whenever there was an increase in wages, there was an increase in taxes or inflation. We've been on a downslide since then. We need change.
Other countries think that we all walk around with guns and, you know, if there's something going on, then we just start shooting at each other. That's the media. That's the way we're presented because that's what sells.
A culture of fear is easier to control.
And putting Democrats against Republicans also puts us against each other, and the corruption is in both parties.
The planet went in a short time from global cooling to global warming.
Well, it's a dynamic system, there's for sure. I mean,
of course.
Well, that was
okay,
not
and so,
the case back then.
so I mean, for me, for this film, I traveled to all around the world, to many, many countries. And the influence of man is quite profound upon the world, you know. And so that, to me, there is some logic to say, hey, we really need to have a look at what we're doing.
65 million years ago, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere was 8 times bigger than it is now. And that was when the major crops that we use, like rice and soybeans and corn, were developed, and wheat. They were developed then. Now they're starving for CO2. They need more of it. We all need more CO2.
And wouldn't it seem, though, one thing that no one puts into this, I used to travel the world extensively, and a lot of these meters from the UN were in parking lots and so on. If you really wanted the temperature, would you not take it off the Earth in the altitude that the airplanes fly? And up there, there's records of years and years of what the temperature is, and the temperature hasn't changed that much. And our effect on the world is so small, matched to the natural things of St. Helens blowing up and situations like that. And it's not going to be cured by taxing the American public.
Absolutely.
And it's a political, because UN started with population was we couldn't feed it. And then they went to the ice ages coming. And then they went to global warming. Now they're climate change. And all of this means taking the rich countries' money and giving it to everyone else. It's the UN, and the UN ought to be done away with.
During the time that the Arctic Ocean had a reduction of ice.
Okay, well, all of a sudden, political figures jump in, and they are suddenly experts on things like global warming, cultures in the Middle East that are perhaps insignificant and can be bombed and eliminated, or are threats or evil people, or even the way money flows around the country, Wall Street taxation, things like that. I mean, how can a person know all these things?
Yeah, I really think that they can. I think they can try as hard as they can, but that's another example of it takes so many people, and it takes asking people who might know more than you do to really make a change in any way. So
it comes down to basically an intellectual ability.
Yeah, intellectual ability, but also like sharing with each other and asking for help when you need it.
All right, and one last question. Do you think money's going to win this election?
No.
My kids, their generation, they've pretty well given up. I grew up in the 60s, and so we were used to causing trouble and raising Cain. But that generation just hasn't gotten, if they've gotten involved, I mean, look at the student loans. All four of my kids graduated from college and they all four have student debt. And our government is making a profit off of that in the billions of dollars. As opposed, I mean, it's like it's a tax on going to college. And they've just given up on it. I would have, if it was my generation, I think we would have been in the streets.
So why did you write Hope?
That's what our country needs right now. We need some hope. Everything's getting worse and worse and worse, and things gotta change. But there seems to be a lot of change in the air. People want change. We need a lot of change. That's hope.
You think people are going to be motivated to involve themselves in changing the country?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. You know, this country is sitting on the edge of really terrible times, and if we don't pick something different, if we don't change drastically, we're heading for the abyss.
And the reason I say this is when you watch the political ad campaigns on television, you need to be able to tell what's real and what's not, and the propaganda out there, and see through the propaganda, and make an educated decision about who's the better person to elect to run this country. And it's sort of the backbone of our democratic system. And if we can't make good choices, then the system doesn't work that well.
Would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
Honestly, not. Not today. To be very honest, not today. Absolutely not. It's been a long week.
All right, thank you. Would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
No, not now. But thanks anyway.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. Would you be interested in participating in an experiment about freedom of speech and activism?
Not now. Thank you, no.
Thanks. Would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
Not today.
Would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
Oh, I'm real busy right now. I'm kind of working on stuff.
Thank you. Would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
I would, but I'm going to be late if I do.
Okay, thank you. Would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
No, I don't think these guys can sit through
it's
it.
It's independent film.
For what?
About
what, I should say?
About freedom of speech. I've gone to various thought-provoking places in the world with this whiteboard and given people a chance to express themselves, take a stand, do whatever they want, stand behind whatever they say for a second, and I'll ask them a couple questions.
No, thanks.
All right, thank you. Experiment on freedom of speech?
No, thank you.
It sounds like a really interesting, I would be curious to see what people wrote, but right now my mind, I was so busy and I was all by myself at work. I've just checked out a little bit.
Thanks, that's okay.
All right.
Yeah, would you be interested in participating in a little experiment on freedom of speech?
I think I'm all set unless you do.
Yeah?
Thank you, though.
All right, thank you.
Nantucket Island and New Bedford, Mass. were famous for whaling in the 1830s and 40s. New Bedford was the richest city in the Western Hemisphere because of the whale oil economy. All this bustling commerce got the attention and made it the destination of an escaped slave named Frederick Douglass. There he met William Coffin. Nantucket is one of the most important places to feel the power of free speech because in the year 1841, the escaped slave Frederick Douglass was invited by the Nantucket-born Coffin to speak on Nantucket Island in front of a group of abolitionists. They had assembled to protest the refusal of the Nantucket High School to admit a black student, Eunice Ross. Frederick Douglass's first speech about his life as an enslaved person was so compelling that he was hired right then as a speaker by the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. He became famous. The abolitionist movement gained political power. Civil War followed. During the Civil War in 1863, Frederick Douglass went on his own accord to Washington, prepared to wait for days if necessary to speak to President Lincoln on behalf of black Civil War soldiers who, for half the pay as whites, were refused to be recognized for valor and were refused promotion. When he sent his card forward, instead of waiting, he was brought right to Lincoln past a line of insulted whites. By then, Frederick Douglass was a household name. It all started with his speech on Nantucket. You want to explain?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking, can't really trust anyone.
Where are you from?
I'm from Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah.
And what do you think?
I like it. It's great.
Yeah, and the people?
Lovely.
Yeah?
Very nice, yeah. Definitely.
From public funding?
From public funding, I think, yeah, that's a problem. Like, I'm going to be a teacher at home, and with the arts, like, people, you know, in the schools, like, and stuff, teachers don't like to teach drama and things like that because they might be nervous or something about it, but I think it's really important, like, so I think there should be more support for it in general.
Have you ever wanted to take a stand for something?
Never.
Never?
Never had to.
Now, why is that?
I can't think of anything where something would be that seriously debatable. I've been in the military, so you really don't have freedom of speech there, but that's all right. That's part of the deal. But here, I can tell you anything.
Because I feel that a lot of pretty much every problem is derived from people being unhappy and unsatisfied with what they have. So I mean, if everyone's content and everyone's happy, what more would you want?
Out here a while ago. It's good money.
And do you like Nantucket?
Yeah, it's nice, except for this heat. It's usually cold.
And is it a struggle to live here?
It is. It's work all day, pay your rent, go home, have a few beers, get up, go back to work, go home, have a few beers, get up, go to work, have a few beers, go to bed.
And what do you do?
I own the Brotherhood of Thieves, part owner of the Brotherhood of Thieves.
And what's that?
It's a restaurant.
And, all right.
Right at the top, near the bank.
What did you write? Can you show us?
That I'll just get another one, and he said just to call when we were ready. So it's up to him. Call me back if he is busy.
I have a spiritual name, and it's Jagajit Kaur. And when I received my spiritual name from India, it means as long as I am true to myself, I'm the light of the world. So I have a personal mantra, I am the light of my soul. So that I have a radiant light, so that I can shine that light to others, so that their light might be sparked.